That was Mr. P.R. Murray, the leader of the lobster liberation movement, so more applause please for P.R. Murray. Now our next poet tonight, I have seen read before, in fact in the book launch earlier this year, and but this is her first time at Dodo Modern Poets. And Katrina Naomi, I'll tell you a little bit about her. Her first full collection, The Girl with the Cactus Handshake, was shortlisted for the London New Poetry Award. She was the first writer in residence at the Bronte Parsonage Museum in Haworth, and her pamphlet, Lunch at the Elephant and Castle, won the 2008 Templar competition. And she's performed at the Aldeburgh, the Essex and the Stanza Poetry Festivals. And now she's here tonight. She's got a number of books on sale as well, so do browse in the interval. Please welcome Katrina Naomi.
Thanks very much, that was a really nice introduction. It's not quite lobsters, but I'm continuing with a seaside theme anyway. I was brought up in Margate, and I live in South London now, but I wonder, has anyone been to Dreamland? It used to be Dreamland. It was an amusement arcade, you know, Big Dippers and all that sort of thing. And as a teenager, I used to go as often as I could, because I was in lust with the bloke who worked on the Dodgems. This poem's for him. Tunnel of Love. It looked uncertain. I tottered in, heels skittering on the pink plastic. There were water trails before the pleasure boat rocked. My rocker was on board. I say mine, he was anyone's, with his bleached blonde quiff. Curl caressing his left eyebrow, scar bisecting the right, so he looked almost symmetrical, apart from his hands. His hands were all over me before we'd even sat on the wet, moulded seats. And I never did. I sat on his lap, my neat white pencil skirt tight as a condom. He couldn't pull it up or down. It wrinkled along my untouched body, wedged against his heaving drain pipes, yet we bobbed as one. Bashed into the fake grass and the fiberglass cave together. I had so little for him to squeeze as we juddered through the darkness, his hormones masked by Brute, 199 from the precinct. And that gorgeous roll-up, which tasted all the better on his tongue. He called it his shag break, his other recreation aside from riding the Dodgems, leaping from one to another with balletic ease in his narrow jeans, like a sexy bus conductor. And he was thin, tight muscles alert in his black t-shirt, little more than a boy, yet he looked so much older, cruising the Dodgems with his sneer, chipped tooth and chiselled hair. I knew enough to keep my hands out of his hair. I kissed him, hard, slid off his lap in the sunshine. He didn't help me out of the boat, just lit another cigarette, its tip sparking the way to the electric cars. This is another Margate poem, but sort of shows quite a different side of where I was growing up. And it sounds really old-fashioned, but this is as well my recollection of how things were. Visitors. The windows were open, but they usually knocked at the back door, and you'd hear them, not just the Toy Town tinkle of Mr. Whippy that my friend's mum told him meant he'd run out of lollies and ice cream, but the calls from the Corona lorry, lemonade, lemonade, though he had limeade, orangeade, cherryade, Tizer, ginger beer, sarsaparilla. The Milko had already been, but Mr. Corona only visited Edinburgh Walk on Fridays, took the empties for a penny off as I thumbed the bumps on the bottles. There was the Rag and Bone on a Saturday in a mesh-sided cart, and my new dad doubled up winter and summer, delivering coal and turf. The fishman called on Fridays too. He didn't need a jingle. You could smell him all the way from the sea. At Christmas it was the Sally Army Band, and Mum always had the same request. Sent me out in my Led Zepp sweatshirt to ask in the deep midwinter. Once or twice there was a knife sharpener on a bike who also did scissors. When the Christian Aid collectors came, Mum said to put a few tuppences in, made it feel like 10p pieces in the red paper wallets. One year the Sally Army brought us a grocery box covered with silver foil, and inside a ham, oranges, cake. It made Mum cry even before they'd played. The clairvoyant arrived, unannounced, told Mum her future, wanted no payment. I worked for a human rights group for a long time, and it's always interested me, perhaps I should say, how the British government reacts to different dictators. Obviously, given the situation with Gaddafi at the moment, and I remember not so long ago the Chilean dictator Pinochet, lots of Tory MPs running around and saying it would be a nice idea to let him live out his last few years in dignity in Surrey. I decided to write this. Pinochet's garden. Punctured gasps of bog cotton in the marsh by the stream, only he knew the way through. He liked his knowledge. He had the gardener's dows, selected plants on the hour, every hour, calibrating which were the last to droop. He admired cacti for their instinct, their endurance, liked the sweat of his greenhouse, the heat forced to its limit. He logged what could survive beyond the open mouths of orchids. He knew all of their Latin names. As a boy, he'd snipped the heads off lilies. Now he wanted beauty, found comfort in the red wounds of roses. One task he retained. No one was allowed to shoo the birds from the lawn. He hung his catapult from a hook. His blooms won prizes. His soil rich, bone meal rich. I'll do a couple of the Bronte poems. I had an amazing experience being writer in residence up at the Bronte Parsonage Museum. I didn't know anything about the Brontes before I went. I'm still not entirely sure why they chose me. I think they wanted someone who maybe had a fresh approach, who perhaps wasn't going to kowtow to the Brontes and what everyone thinks about them. I had access to all of the sort of Brontes ephemera and manuscripts, books, and all their sort of household items. And this poem's called Confession. I'm turning these curling tongs in my palm. Not just any tongs, but the Brontes' tongs. I'm doing as I'm asked. I write in pencil. Keep everything in its acid-free paper. Wear these sweaty, milky gloves. I squeeze the prongs together, ever so slightly. Nothing. And again, nothing gives but for a shred of singed fibre from the base of the handles, which has been part of the tongs since the time of ringlets. And I've just snapped it off. I rustle the tongs back in their paper, shove them into storage. Who would know it was me? Who would study curling tongs when there's Bronte letters, poems and manuscripts? All those things I ought to write about, but can't quite turn my hand to. last poem I'll read in this set is the title poem from this little pamphlet. And if anyone's interested, that is actually Charlotte Bronte's corset on the cover, but it's pink in reality rather than blue, which the designers did. So. And I didn't really get on very well with Charlotte Bronte, it would be fair to say. One thing you might need to know about her is that she's a tiny, tiny woman. She's probably up to about here on me, and her waist is about the size of my thigh, I would say. This is Charlotte Bronte's corset. I'm sorry, Charlotte, for this disservice. Of course, your corset is discoloured. These padded cups no longer coral pink. Strips of whale plunge the depths of your bodice. The slightly rusty metal strip grips from breastbone to wasp waist. I feel like a tabloid reporter, sniffing around the armholes of your life. I once wore a corset in my late teens. Black PVC over a black skirt, fishnets and suede stilettos. I didn't know a lot of things then, hardly knew who I was, had barely heard of you. So what gives me the right to go searching for your smalls, to lay out your stays in the library? I don't have so many scruples, can't be tight-laced. I need to breathe the length of my lungs, and I do know I've made your tiny body so much larger than in life. Forgive me, my waist is so very different to yours. Thanks.
Well, that was a wonderful first set from Katrina, and Margate is one of my favourite places. I especially like the shelter on the beach there where T.S. Eliot was supposed to have written part of The Wasteland. So, grand place, and I think they're rebuilding Dreamland, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Sorry? Funding for it anyway. Yeah, okay, good. So more applause, please, for Katrina. We'll hear more. Our next performer is someone who has been to Dodo Modern Poets before, and she's one of the premier organisers and movers and shakers in London poetry, really. She publishes collections of poetry, including her own, some of which are here tonight. She organises Loose Muse, which is on the second Wednesday of every month. And remind me of the venue, Agnes?
It's here.
Oh, it's here, right, okay.
This very place.
It's at this very place, okay.
And can I just add, it's London's only women's writers' club.
Yes, okay, I think you all heard that. So London's only women's writers